Makkot Daf Bet Amud Aleph. Mabruk on those who finish Sanhedrin. Welcome to those who are starting Makkot with us. May the hana'ah that Hashem gets from you learning every day be a zechut for you and your family. New Mishnah. Kesed ha'idim na'asim zumamin. How do witnesses become zumamin? Where they get zomemmed. That means, in general, that two witnesses are convicted of testifying falsely by a second set of witnesses that say that they were with them at that time. And the punishment usually is whatever they were trying to do to the victim or the accused, that will happen to the false witnesses. The Mishnah, however, will take an inside-out way, because what's going to give you a case? It's going to give you two cases that the Gemara is not going to like what's going on. Because why? They're testifying about this Kohen guy, that he's the son of a divorced woman or the son of a woman who had halitza, which means that her husband passed away without children, and the brother-in-law, instead of doing yibum, gave her chalitza. Both cases, if someone's that son, if a Kohen married them, that son is pasul lekehuna. They're testifying on Mr. Kohen that he's pasul lekehuna. Now, we can't say that the witnesses, the false witnesses, even if he's a Kohen, he doesn't become pasul lekehuna like he tried to do to the victim. Rather, he gets Makkot. Similarly, let's say they testify about someone else that they say that he killed by accident and therefore he has to go to Galut, and then there's Zomend. We don't say this guy, these witnesses should be sent to Galut instead. They get Makkot instead. You asked, how do we make Eidim Zomemin? Which means, what's the format of saying that the witnesses get punished with what they're trying to punish, what they're trying to do to someone else? And also, you gave two cases where the punishment did not match the crime. We don't say that become a ben gerusha, ben halutza. We don't say that they're pasul b'kuna, or we send them to Galut. Rather, we give them Makkot instead. So why would the Mishnah say that? Additionally, the Tanya Kamam, we see later on, Aval Amru Lahem, if the second set of witnesses said to the original witness, we clearly say the stipulation that has to take place for Zumamin. In order to make someone Zumamin, the second witnesses can't just contradict the first witness. That's just contradicting witnesses that cancel out. What's the Hidush of Zumamin is they will tell the first set of witnesses, you can't have testified on Monday that Reuven killed Shimon because on that day you were with us. So later on, we see clearly that the Mishnah teaches you how to do Zumamin. So what's our Mishnah talking about? The Gemara says, no, our Mishnah is referring back to Masechet Sanhedrin, because it said over there, Kol Zomin Makdimin La'oto Mitat. All Zomin witnesses are given the exact execution that they were trying to get the victim, the accused of. Except in the case of if they're testifying about the daughter of a Kohen or a man who had adultery with her, right? They would get serifa. They don't get serifa, rather they get henek. Those are the witnesses. And also, our Mishnah is now saying that you don't even do anything similar to the punishment. Meaning, in that case, they changed the type of execution they got. Our Mishnah is not going piggybacking on that and saying not even that. They don't even get, in our Mishnah, we weren't mentioning where they get similar punishment. Rather, they get a different punishment completely. And they get Malkut, rather, they just get Malkut. Guess that was the case. Our Mishnah, our Mishnah. Okay, how we know that you can't make the guy pasul? Let's say that Edim testifying about the guy that he's not a Kohen anymore. And now they're Kohanim. How come we don't make him pasul? Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, the Amar Krapa says, "Va'asitim lo ka'asher zaman." You do to the witnesses what they plan to do. The lo v'lo zaro, right? There's no reason to punish his children that they should be losing out on the kuna because of their father. Where it says, okay, disqualify the witnesses, but the children are still kasher. Where it says, no. In order to do the exact punishment, you would need it to match the crime, which would be making that Kohen, the accused Kohen, him and his children. And if you can't do the same to the witnesses and his children, we don't do it, rather you get Malkut. Okay. Bar Padamar Batabar says, Kavachomer, we can prove from Kavachomer that you don't make the witnesses pasul lekuna. Uma mehalel enu mithalel, if the Kohen who marries a woman that's pasul to him and he makes pasul lekuna children, he himself does not become pasul from that. He can still be real Kohen. Say that 5 times fast. These Zomamin witnesses who want to disqualify a Kohen, were unsuccessful, so for sure they won't become they for sure won't disqualify themselves. Gemara says maskif la Ravin isn't like that. Im can be tata turat Ravin don't mean. If that's the case, you just knocked out the whole concept of Ravin don't mean. Because why? Umar has to kill the known skala, bal skol below sakal and then a false witnesses who got the victim stoned by testifying falsely, they can't be zomemed, right? We're learning around that if the witnesses testified about someone and the execution was carried on that accused person, and then they got zomemed afterward, it doesn't work. It only works after the sentencing, before the execution is carried out. So if they actually got the guy sikila, they actually got the guy killed, they can't get killed. So so then regular zomem witnesses, if they're obviously not successful in getting him killed, they also should not get killed. But we know that's not the case. Rather, we like the first answer of Rishub and Levi. Okay. The next part of Mishnah said regarding the galut. I know that you don't put the guy in the galut. Says, the guy who killed by accident shall go to the Miklat. Who would lose mean him and not witnesses? The explanation, if the guy had killed someone on purpose, no galut doesn't go to galut because he gets executed instead. So they did not kill someone on purpose. They for sure should not get to galut. The Gemara says, we don't like that as well. The reason why we don't let the guy who killed on purpose go to the galut is because we don't want him to get kapara. He needs to get executed for an intentional murder. But they didn't perform a mezid, they did something less. Just on memories, maybe they should get galut. Maybe they should get kapara. And we see that doesn't make sense because we know they don't do that. Therefore, the first answer is Akish more than the second answer. How do we know the concept of edim zomin from the Torah? The Gemara says remez le'edim zomin. What do you mean a hint? What do you mean? Where's a hint? The pasuk says it outright. What do you mean? I need a hint. Where is it alluded to? The Gemara says how do we know that the edim zomin get malkut when you can't punish them the regular way? All right, so yes, you're trying to charge the guy $100, they pay $100. If they're trying to get the guy killed, they get killed. If they can't do exactly what they did, where do we see that you can give them malkut? The Gemara says, now, pasuk is very interesting. It says, if you exonerate, you make the guy innocent, and you make the guy rasha convicted, then you'll give the guilty one malkut. Now, that doesn't usually make sense because mishum why does that make sense? Because in general, the only time a person gets malkut is when it's something that he's convicted of doing against God. He ate something that he asur to eat, not kosher. However, our case, the pasuk is referring to something like there's two plaintiffs, there's two litigants. You exonerated one and you convicted the other. What type of case would that get malkut? So it must be talking about it must be witnesses trying to get the wrong person convicted. So it meant the other witnesses testified on them. They exonerated the innocent guy, the maker, and they made these first set witnesses as guilty rishaim. And therefore we see the pasuk says you give him malkut. That's our source. So why don't you beautiful proof, Ula, but why don't you bring a different proof? Pasuk says, don't testify falsely. Malkut from that. Where it says no. Mishum behave lav she'en b'maaseh, because that isur is a lav without isur without a action. You're just talking, you're just testifying. The whole lav she'en b'maaseh, and lokin lav any isur that has no action, they get malkut. There are four different pointers made about izumin. They can't become pasul lekuna if they try to do this one else. The end we said in our Mishnah as well. They don't get sent to galut. Then mashim the kofer. If they testify that someone's ox killed as a mu'ad, which means they gored the ox gored 3 times, they have to pay the value of the person that died. We'll see what that means. Actually, we'll see exactly that. But they don't pay that amount. Then nimkarin be'eved ivri, and also they don't get sold as an Eved Ivri for testifying falsely about someone else. So then the guy gets sold as an Eved Ivri only if he is if he got convicted of stealing and he doesn't have money to pay back, he gets sold as a slave. So we don't do that to witnesses. We're going to delve into each one separately, but we add a fifth one. Mishum Rabbi Akiva, another one. Af en mishalmin al pi asman. They also don't pay if they confess. We'll explain each one at a time. Well, the first two, the first one with the divorcee or the halutza son, we explain in our Mishnah. They also mentioned the case of the Miklat in our Mishnah. They don't pay kofir. Kasavre kufre kapara. The reason is because they hold that the kofir, that the money that you're paying for the person that died, is kapara. You get kapara for what happened, and these guys don't need kapara. That's what Rashi says. That Ramban and Ritva blast Rashi, and they say Rashi meant something else, which means Rashi was very. You see, it's very small Rashi in that part. He didn't explain himself. He thought it was pashut, but the answer is that the whole point of kofir is your animal killed someone, and therefore you're technically a chayab mitah. Over here, you're trying to get the guy to pay money for that, but if you failed as a idim zomin, you can't pay that money because you are not chayav. You can't be chayav that money because your animal did not kill someone that you have to be getting atonement for. And therefore, what they'll do, they'll get malkut instead. The Gemara says, "Man tana kufr kapara." Who holds that kufr is kapara? Mar Hizda Rabbi Shua beno Rabbi Yochanan ben Roki. This is a figure. Tanbet says, "Benatam pidyon afsho." To pay a ransom for the life. The Menizaki holds you're paying the ransom for the person that died. Rabbi Ishmael ben Rabbi Yochanan the Hamazik, you're paying the value of the guy of the owner of the ox. Maybe the Makkot is as follows. The more stuff about kufra kabamona. The first opinion holds that you're paying money, the kofer is the money that you're just paying for the damages. You're paying for the person that died. But more savar, kufra kapara, the other opinion holds, Rabbi Shmuel holds, no, it's kapara, and therefore you have to pay the value of the one who's responsible. You're paying your life. You're paying off for your life. Marabano, la. The kula alama kufra kapara, every holds is kapara. The mahog is following. More savar ben nezizak shemina. Tanakama holds that you assess the amount to be paid by how much the guy was worth when you killed him, when he died by the animal. Umor savar b'damiz mazik shaminan. And Rabbi Shmuel holds you are paying the value as kapara. You're paying your own value. Ma'atim Rabban, how come Rabban hold that? Neemar hashata lamata. It mentions the word hashata by kofir. The neemar hashata lamata also mentions above by causing a pregnant woman to have a miscarriage. Malam benizak, just like over there, you're paying the value of the fetus. Apkam benizak, so it's over here paying the value of the victim. Rishmael, Kornishmael, what does it learn from? It says that you should pay a ransom for his life, which sounds like the owner of the ox. How do they explain that? In what does he do with that pasuk? He says, yes, yes, you're paying the value of the victim, but you're paying off you're paying for the victim, but you're paying off with your value because you have to get kapara. Next, the enim can be we said earlier that they can't get sold as a slave. Savara amruna lememar say, honey, that only applies. That only applies where the guy has money to pay off for stealing. The migud because since the guy he would try to convict would not have been sold because he only gets sold if he can't pay. In Hunamilas, and therefore the witness is also not sold because they weren't trying to get him enslaved. But if the accused did not have money to pay for the theft they were trying to accuse him of, so even if the witnesses would have money, they still get sold because that's what would have happened. Mar says, the witnesses should have said, it's not my problem you don't have money. If you would have had money, you're not getting sold. So we also shouldn't be sold. Mar says, therefore he says, it only applies when they're not sold as slaves, only when either they have money or they don't have money. Because then it knocks out the reciprocity. However, if they both don't have money, they are sold because if that would have happened to them, they would have been sold. And that's what they're trying to do to him. Maravala says no. The Torah says he shall be sold for his theft. Only he's sold for theft and not edim zomin. Mishum Rabbi Akiva says, my time Rabbi Akiva, why did Rabbi Akiva hold that if they confess to not chayav? Kasavar, he holds kanasahu, that you pay hazma money is a fine. It's not compensating anybody for anything because you didn't do anything. You only tried to get something done to him. Uknas, and we know penalties, and mishalin piatzmo, you don't pay if you confess. Maraba, we tell I can prove this. Shahare lo asu ma'aseh v'neragim umshamid. and I know this because if they get domamed on a murder or they get domamed on a person who they try to get them to pay money, they still get executed or forced to pay money. Mar Nachman Nachman also says, Teda, I also could prove this, Sha'arei Mamon bi'ad ba'alim muslimin, because I know that in the case of money, the guy could still have his money when the witnesses get domamed and they still have to pay the money. Gemara says, Mani hu lo asu ma'aseh hamid Rabbah. Nachman said the same exact thing as Rabbah. They both said in different words that the reason I know that in domain are different and it's a penalty because they could pay money when they didn't cause the guy to lose the money because he didn't pay it. Gemara, so why is Nachman? What's he adding? The Gemara says he's not. Emma, reword it. Nachman also agrees.